Hi everyone. I want to keep my commitment and do the lunar eclipse in Gemini video for you. And this is, the days in Los Angeles are shorter. And so if I get busy or involved with certain things, the sun sets by about 4:30. Today's sunset was 4:44 p.m. on the day of the lunar eclipse, or before the lunar eclipse. Certainly intriguing in terms of timing. And I was like, I'm getting to the point where I kind of want to move my videos indoors and I want to have a better setup so that I can do these videos indoors. This is certainly not an optimal setup. This is the first video I've done where I'm actually sitting in bed and I have a stack of books on my lap and the camera is on top of it and I'm sort of holding it with my hand. So it would not surprise me if you get seasick watching this a little bit, but I do think that the content hopefully will be strong enough and interesting enough that it will keep you somewhat riveted. I don't intend to do astrology videos sitting in bed. The other thing is that, if I sit in bed in this particular spot in bed for too long, I fall asleep because this is where I sleep. And so my body sort of thinks I'm getting ready to go to sleep, and I can sleep really quickly. I can fall asleep just like that. So another motivation to keep this video short, and I still have some stuff to do, so I can't really go to bed. The other thing is that this angle is just terrible. It's fine in terms of lighting, but you get to see my post-Thanksgiving face all big and it's so close and whatever. Okay, let's talk about the lunar eclipse in Gemini, which is such a fascinating lunar eclipse. And as you know, I don't search for ways in which to make my content unique or specific, but I certainly take my time in trying to ensure that what I share might be somewhat unique. It's just like, why, if you're clicking through a few different astrology videos, why come and watch something that I do? So I try to make sure the content is relevant and interesting. And the thing that came through for me with this particular eclipse very, very strongly and very clearly is that in the Vedic or Jyotish or ancient Indian tradition, when eclipses occur or are upon us, and we have an eclipse on November the 30th and then on December the 14th, there can often be the overall prevailing advice in certain schools is to scale back your activities and be in meditation. And I'm such a happy and excited eclipse person and eclipse astrologer that I never fully appreciated or understood that advice or solution in a way that I have this time around. So the idea when eclipses are upon us is to actually scale back our own energies to some extent and to be in meditation, to do less, to be less yang, to be less active. And the way I am understanding this advice is twofold. Number one, eclipses are a time when, as I've mentioned on this video before, God takes the wheel. So if God is going to take the wheel, and if the eclipses are going to work their action or magic on you and your life anyway, then you may as well show up for what is showing up. And you're going to be in action anyway. And you don't need to. And that in and of itself is going to be enough. So if you keep on carrying on and keep doing whatever it is that is showing up and responding to it and showing up wherever you need to show up and do whatever you need to do, and there's a sense of fate, destiny, uncontrollable events, God taking the wheel somehow, things shifting and moving, all you really need to do is show up. Do show up though. So that the eclipses can work their magic in your life, especially if we're dealing with positive changes or positive energies. Typically with a full moon lunar eclipse, this could be something that's pushing you in the limelight or coming into culmination or contracts or completions. And to take on more actions and activities at the time of an eclipse just is foolish, because it's almost like courting disaster, because whatever it is that is going on should be enough to handle. So being in a space where you've retreated your own energies to some extent and are in a place of observation and meditation seems like fantastic advice. The second more compelling reason when it comes to a lunar eclipse, because a lunar eclipse is a full moon, and so we're talking often about heightened emotions. Sometimes there's a sense of joy and contentment, but more often than not, many people feel it with a sense of unrest. And this is an interesting full moon. Another more compelling reason to be in meditation is so that you can observe what is coming up. Whether it is something that is being revealed, people's behaviors and patterns that are being revealed, something that you may have been mulling or wondering about that might have been a little bit cloudy, you might get some clarity on. With the full moon, the disk of the moon is revealed. And often, and I'm going to go into the details on this in a second, I've used analogies such as the milk in the pot comes to a boil and it spills over. It can be, full moons can be fluidic, tears and just emotional culminations, tantrums. For me, with this particular full moon in Gemini, but with this eclipsy advice in general, I feel like there's something really sound about the idea of doing less and being in observation and being in meditation, because there's enough unrest at around the time of a full moon that you can actually watch whatever it is that, insofar as God has taken the wheel, whatever it is that is being revealed, to let it be revealed and to sit with it. The analogies that come to mind from a Buddhist or a Vedantic perspective, of course, are the idea of being a mountain in a storm. The storm will pass you by, but you remain the mountain, being the observer. The thing that comes to mind is my understand. I wasn't there, and this is not the time to give you the full story and the details as I understand them or research them. But there was this story about how some family member or friend published something in the tabloids related to Oprah Winfrey, and she called Maya Angelou in tears or anguish, and Maya Angelou's advice to her was to say, "Thank you." Now, what was really behind that with regard to is that thank you for being grateful for everything you've given to you. From an eclipse perspective, it is a thank you for what is being revealed to you. And as I said, because it is a full moon lunar eclipse, and because the theme of clarity can be so profound at the time of a full moon, where the disk of the moon is lit up, with a full moon, emotional culminations, tantrums, suppressed emotional and intuitive feelings that come to the surface. On a positive front, being pushed into the limelight, becoming popular for some reason, something comes to culmination, something comes to completion, you get an offer. All of that could be operating. When it comes to eclipses, we're talking about people passing away, an increased frequency of deaths. And if you are not impacted by it directly, other people around you are bound to be impacted by it. And so you will feel it. And with eclipses, this kind of eclipsy, God taking the wheel, often the quality of the passing can have this kind of sudden, someone is eclipsed into or out of your life. People being, or situations being eclipsed in and out of your life can either be physical transition like a death. It can also be relationship transitions. And again, I'm going to expand on this some more in a second. But this idea of this, all of a sudden it's just like, God taking the wheels like this, bam, bam. And there's a murkiness often with God. There's a mystery to the deaths and the passing. And there's a sense of loss of control. It's not a typical someone has been ailing for a while and it sort of feels like it's a natural transition, as much as it is a what the hell was that? And why does it feel so sudden or so traumatic or so confusing or so puzzling, or why is God making their presence felt in this particular way, in a certain sense? Those kinds of deaths and transitions, changes, an increased frequency in them. So when you are looking at the energy of an eclipse, God taking the wheel, fated changes occurring, the end of chapters, the end of a book in some respects, the handing off of energies that have been active since the middle of 2018 to a new set of energies that are being introduced because the eclipses are changing signs and so are occurring in different parts of your chart. The tumult of 2020 in general with some of the astrological aspects never has the advice of just sitting still and letting the eclipse do its work, I think, been more sound. And this idea, this epiphany, this clarity that I finally had with regard to why it is sort of the ancient Indians are certainly a school within that ancient astrological tradition would say that when it comes to eclipses, go into retreat. Never has that made more sense to me than this time around. Going into retreat, as I said, to me indicates both a need to do less and initiate less because you're going to be responding to enough. And often the things that you respond to with eclipses could be positive, offers, as I said, or something that pushes you into the limelight or something along those lines. And then sometimes the more unnerving or seemingly negative or transitiony or ending aspect of eclipses, or a feeling like your life is not in control aspect of eclipses, it's better to be in retreat anyway so that you can be in observation mode, so that you can really see what is happening, see what is being revealed, see what the universe is communicating to you, and say, thank you. Got it. Seen it. Thank you. Now, there's every chance and likelihood that if you know your chart and you know which house is occupied by the sign of Gemini, then this eclipse, and with a lunar eclipse, the week before and after this, 2 months before the eclipse, the week before and after September the 30th, could have provided certain clues, week before and after September 30th, and the week before and after November 30th. And of course, we have the next eclipse on December 14th. So with the December 14th eclipse, I would say the week before and after December 14th, and the week before and after February 14th, because that's a solar eclipse. So we look to 2 months after the solar eclipse for key messages as well. So certainly we are entering a 2-week period where the week after November 30th and the week before December 14th, so the 2 weeks between November 30th and December 14th, we are in the heart of eclipse land. And, it is time to kind of fasten our seatbelts and process and digest and enjoy or expel or be in observation mode, less quick to react, less quick to act. Because it could be that if you take an action that is willful or reactive, that you could simply be contributing to the eclipse energy for someone else, and you could find yourself impacted by the highly charged energies that are at play. And with this particular Gemini lunar eclipse, relationship energies, codependency energies, scorpionic energies are really very active because it's a Gemini lunar eclipse, and Gemini is ruled by Mercury, and Mercury is in Scorpio. And the sign of Scorpio is now freer and freer of any hindrances with Mars being direct, Mars being a ruler of Scorpio in Aries, and being really kind of driven and single-minded and quite decisive and short-tempered about what it perceives as obstacles or who is with you and who you feel is not with you. And Pluto, the other co-ruler of Scorpio, now kind of a little bit freer of some of the transits that have been impacting it in Capricorn. Pluto in Capricorn being ruled by Saturn, currently in Capricorn. Saturn being triggered by the fact that Mercury in Scorpio is sextiling Saturn. So, you've got 2 powerful planets that are dispositing this lunar eclipse chart. Mars in Aries and Saturn in Capricorn. And both tough, unresty planets. One, Mars, really signifying and intensifying your own set in Aries, your own sense of what is right for you in the purest of forms, with a sense of assertion and even aggression and clarity. Mars in Aries takes no prisoners. And Saturn in Capricorn, intent on building and constructing and identifying and understanding what is needed to help you fulfill your fullest potential in this 3D reality, time-space reality that Saturn is here to manage and control. What lessons need to be learned? And lessons are a big deal for Saturn right now because it's getting ready to leave Capricorn, where it's been since December 2017. And as it enters the last few degrees of Capricorn, it is intent always in tying up those lessons. Karma, cause and effect, results. What have you learned? What is your philosophy based on wherever Capricorn sits in your chart? And Saturn in Capricorn takes no prisoners. So you have the two dispositors of the chart in very take no prisoners aspects or angles. One that is hasty, Mars, one that is super deliberate, Saturn. And while the full moon lunar eclipse is in the sign of Gemini, you cannot underestimate the idea of the fact that Mercury in Scorpio, that is disposited by Mars and ultimately Saturn as well, deep-seated emotional truths related to relationships are very present at the time of this eclipse in terms of what is being revealed. The other thing to keep in mind is that when we actually look at the full moon lunar eclipse in Gemini and we look at the aspects that that it is illuminating, we can't lose sight of the fact that this full moon is quincunx Venus also in Scorpio. So the relationship and money planet is also in Scorpio and is in conversation with this full moon, in awkward conversation, in a conversation where integrating these energies requires a certain amount of effort, like being in the middle of a seesaw. The full moon in Gemini, chatty, social, gossipy, communicative, written communication, telephone, social media, technology, chatter, phone conversations, seemingly light. And it would have been light had it not been in this awkward angle to Venus in Scorpio. Venus, the planet of relationships and money, intensely uncomfortable in Scorpio because Venus, who likes harmony, does not like to dwell too long in this kind of heated emotional truth of so the planet of relationships is having to confront till the middle of December really intense and deep-seated emotional truths. Very uncomfortable. Venus is not strong or so on the one hand, there's the element of chatter and phone calls and gossip and news and information with the full moon in Gemini that could be light, but it's not, because that gossip and information and chatter is pointing to another set of energies that has to be incorporated, which is a Venus enormously uncomfortable, being forced to confront issues related to Scorpionic issues related to truth and power and manipulation and gaslightiness and issues related to give and take. Issues related to give and take. And Mercury, also in Scorpio, ruling this full moon, is thinking, processing, taking in, making decisions about who to be in contract and communication with, and what it is processing and what it is learning through this uncomfortable process of looking at the deep-seated emotional truth of relationships. The full moon in Gemini will bring its revelations very much through communications within your neighborhood. Now, Gemini is the sign of the neighborhood. And the neighborhood, I don't mean literal neighborhood, although that could be part of it, your neighbors. I mean the well you live in. Who are you in touch with regularly? Who are you talking to regularly? Historically, or in ancient times, your neighbors and your siblings and your relatives would sit in this part of the chart, or related to the sign of Gemini. And the reason for that is that in ancient times, there was always a strong, an incredibly strong possibility that you would be living with your siblings or around your siblings, your neighbors, your relatives, in the village or the town or the settlement or wherever the human settlement was, as astrology was being used and taking shape. So siblings and relatives and neighbors commuting, cars, vehicles, chatter, fitting in, talking, gossiping, information, data. What is the word on the street? What is happening with so and so and such and such? Very Geminian. And in 2020, 2021, we're talking about social media, we're talking about the telephone, we're talking about FaceTiming, we're talking about computers, we're talking about technology, we're talking about your commute, we're talking about the baristas at the Starbucks where you get your coffee every day, we're talking about the colleagues you sit in with your office or office environment, whatever that means to you every day, what role things like Zoom, etc. have, Ubers and commute and cars and vehicle, there's every chance or possibility that the full moon lunar eclipse the week before and after September 30th and the week before and after November 30th, that the information and the revelation and the energy is going to be Geminian. It's going to be communication and information and data based. But there's also no question that what is seemingly facile and seemingly what is floating around in the breeze around me in terms of data and information is tied very, very deeply to emotional truths related to power dynamics and just dynamics in relationships that may have been murky. Neptune is square the nodes of the moon. Neptune is also stationary. So things that Neptune is in Pisces, encouraging you to release certain things that are, with Neptune, it's a planet of releasing and letting go and kind of understanding that nothing and nobody is yours and your ultimate connection is with spirit, and all of that is well and good. It's sort of the antithesis planet to Saturn, which is like, you're here, be successful. Neptune is like, what is success and why is success important? Because all of this is meaningless anyway. And Neptune being stationary, things where you have had an intuitive feeling that things may not be all right are somehow exaggerated at the time of this full moon. And these revelations could, for some of us, bring some informational clarity around things that have felt intuitively murky. Now, after these uncomfortable transits related to this full moon, there are a couple of transits that are worth mentioning that provide opportunities for stability and healing. The full moon is sextile Chiron in Aries. Chiron in Aries, the priority for Chiron in Aries is to heal your ability to go after whatever it is that you want and what is the truest expression of who you are and why you are here. It's a very, Chiron in Aries is very healing me, so that I can go and get exactly what it is that I want and when I want it. I'm just looking at the time super quick. So there is a self-serving, self-cleaning, self-clearing, putting yourself first. What are some wounds that you have been carrying that don't allow you to do that? What is the information that you get? Deep-seated emotional truths that are standing in the way of all of this. Mars is direct, Chiron is in Aries, Mars is direct in Aries. So somewhere, and the only downside to the Chiron healing process is that in order to be healed, you've got to feel the wound. If you don't feel the wound, you don't know that there's something there that needs to be healed. And so that aspect of healing with Chiron always creates this ouch. You got to feel what needs to be healed. Otherwise, you'll never know it's there. You got to feel the cut. The second, interestingly, opportunity creating, stabilizing aspect is that Mercury, the ruler of this full moon, is sextile, creating an opportunity for stability with Saturn in Capricorn, one of the two dispositors of this full moon. And that is really Saturn's preoccupation with releasing what needs to be released and learning the lessons and doing what needs to be done towards fulfilling your potential to the max. There's something about whatever it is that's coming up with this eclipse that contributes to a sense of, again, release and putting yourself first. But the question is, what is it that is coming up for observation that if you kind of go with this ancient Jyotish Vedic Hindu perspective of it's an eclipse, so let me be an observation. What is being revealed and how is it pointing the way forward? This eclipse, these eclipses in Gemini and Sagittarius are really interesting because they move really fast. We only get 2 eclipses in Gemini and Sagittarius. And typically eclipses take 2 to 2.5 years to kind of work their way through. And we get at least 1 year where all the eclipses are in the 2 signs where they're occurring. With the Gemini Sagittarius eclipses, we get no year where all the eclipses in the year are in just Gemini and Sagittarius. This year, we had a full moon in Sagittarius on June the 4th, full moon eclipse, June 4th, 5th. We have this full moon lunar eclipse in Gemini on November 30th. We have a solar eclipse in Sagittarius on December the 14th, but we've also had 2 other eclipses in Capricorn and Cancer. Yeah, 3 eclipses in Capricorn and Cancer, if I'm remembering correctly. And next year, at around this time, we have an eclipse in Taurus. So the Gemini, there's something to the idea that after the back and forth and feeling imprisoned in 2020, when we head towards 2021, things move a whole lot faster. Jupiter moves through Aquarius really fast and actually dips into Pisces at what is kind of like the speed of light for Jupiter. The eclipses move through Gemini and Sagittarius in a seemingly really fast way, determined to head to sort of Taurus and Scorpio land, fascinatingly. There's a speed. Mercury, of course, is retrograde next year, as it typically is in Saturn and Jupiter and the outer planets are, but Venus is not and Mars is not. So some of the retrograde activities and the intensity of the retrograde activities that we felt in 2020 are not there in 2021. There's a lot more forward movement. Plus, we're in this period right now from the middle of November of this year till pretty much the middle of January of unfettered forward movement too. And again, this sense of forward movement around the planets kind of dictating and taking the wheel and moving us forward, but where to? And so we get these 2 eclipses. I'm taking a look at, I made like copious notes trying to get a sense, or again, give you information about this that really... This eclipse is a turning point. It's a pivot, okay? Whatever it is that's happening with an eclipse, you could say, well, eclipses are always turning points and pivots. Yes, that is true. But this is especially true of this particular eclipse because with this eclipse, we get 1 complete eclipse cycle in the Gemini and Sagittarius axis. And that is in the sign of Sagittarius, where we have a solar eclipse on December the 14th and a lunar eclipse on May the 26th. We get only 1 complete eclipse cycle where you have a solar eclipse and 6 months later a corresponding lunar eclipse in the same sign. All the other eclipses are either isolated. This year we had 2 lunar eclipses, 2 full moons prior to the solar eclipse on December the 14th. Next year, we'll have, we only have on the Sagittarius Gemini axis 2 Gemini eclipses, 1 on November 13th and 1 on June the 10th. A solar eclipse on June the 10th next year in 2021. That's it. And it is surprising because the Gemini eclipses are the North Node eclipses. The Gemini eclipses are what we are meant to lean into. The Gemini, wherever Gemini is in the chart, is where we are meant to acquire our skills, wherever our muscles are weak, and acquire those skills in order to continue to develop on our hero's journey. So this idea of a turning point and a pivot, this idea that we're being ushered into a new world because the eclipses are changing signs more decisively, and because this lunar eclipse sets us up for the next solar eclipse in 2 weeks' time. That's a complete eclipse cycle of release in Sagittarius. I'll talk more about that when I do the solar eclipse in Sagittarius video. Whatever is being revealed with this eclipse is very much tied to our future, our growth, our building skills, our needing to take action based on what we are observing, because it is that action is going to move us forward. The big question as things get revealed with eclipses are, beginnings and endings go hand in hand. So if you are meant to develop and move forward and acquire a new set of skills related to the sign of Gemini and this idea of neighborhood and who is in the well with you and what does your neighborhood comprise of and what you're learning about gossip and chatter and information and social media and technology and information on the wind or acquisition of cars or vehicles or changing neighborhoods, relatives, siblings. It really much more about who is in the well with you. Relatives and siblings now are part of this chart, but if they're not playing a big role in your day-to-day life, if you are not in touch with them on a day-to-day basis, then they could factor into these eclipses. But it's much more about who is living in the well with you. And if we're talking about the acquisition of new skills with regard to how to cultivate the energy of the sign of Gemini, but also about where does that Gemini sits in your chart. And even though it's a set of eclipses to lean into, there's a question of, in order to create beginnings and to take action based on what is being observed, what also needs to end. You can't really have a beginning without an ending. So somewhere, as these emotional truths are emerging, and through chatter and through gossip or through light casual conversation, that can, if you are just being still and letting those bubbles emerge, or seeing what is appearing in the scorpionic pool that we all have in our lives with regard to relationships and friendships and relationships with business partners or spouses or personal partners or friends or family members, whatever it is that is emerging in that pool where you go, oh, I'm getting a certain kind of clarity that was intuitively murky. I'm observing this. It feels uncomfortable. What is just light is pointing to something deeper. There are two questions to ask. What skills are you being asked to acquire that will help you combat? Because the only way to grow and build muscle is through resistance. This is going to seem like a very contradictory thing that I'm saying. When it comes to North Node eclipses, you have to take action. And yet, this entire video has been about being an observation. Be an observation around what is coming up around this lunar eclipse, but be clear that in order to grow, in order to respond, in order for the eclipses to work their magic on you, you are going to have to take action wherever it is that Gemini sits in your chart, and you are going to be uncomfortable, and it is going to be a new set of tasks that creates a little bit of fear in you because you don't have these skills, the muscles are weak, but it's in the acquisition of these muscles, the building of these muscles, with taking the actions that you need to take, that will give you a new set of skill acquisition related either to Gemini, communication, fitting in, who is in the well with you, or else whichever house Gemini occupies and what that stands for in your chart. Very important. That will be the key to your success moving forward. But when it comes to the time of the eclipses, and the Vedic Jyotish approach of stillness is not a permanent state, it's just around the time of the eclipses. Especially with the full moon lunar eclipse, it's almost a sense of ascetic, be in prayer, just detach for that time period, just separate. We can't. And the eclipses are going to bring their own actions and their own energy. So you're going to be asked to engage no matter what. But try not to splash around in the water so that the water can remain clear and what is needing to be revealed can be revealed. Outside of that, remember, lunar eclipses, for those of you who are blessed with this lunar eclipse with regard to offers or things that push you in the limelight, lunar eclipses between September 30th and November 30th can really bring something into culmination or completion that is out of the ordinary. That is out of the ordinary. A spotlight, stardom, pushing you into the limelight in some way, an offer. And I hope that many of you have that. With eclipses, though, many of you are going to be dealing with the deeper, darker, emotional truths aspect of things is going to be my guess. Let me see if there's anything else I really feel like I want to bring up, because we're already over the 30-minute mark. And I'm not repeating this, so if it shuts off, it shuts off. I think that is it. Oh gosh. I think that is it. So, this is the night of the eclipse. We have the eclipse in, what, 6, 7, 8 hours or something like that. Just, what has been revealed? What is being revealed during this very chatty time? If you're dealing with deaths and transitions that are eclipsy, I'm sorry. They're unnerving and they are challenging and confusing, and we don't really like to feel they have this what the heck quality. Like, really? Is this how this needed to happen quality to them? And that in itself is eclipsy enough. So people who are actually dealing with people being eclipsed out of their lives because they're transitioning or dying in sort of suddenly or mysteriously or confusingly, the veil thins during the time of the eclipses between the 3D reality and whatever reality is out there that we can't really, that we can perceive to some extent, but we really, our physical armor doesn't really allow us to have complete clarity on that. It does, however, provide, with this particular eclipse, some clarity through chatter and through gossip and through seemingly casual chat. Scorpionic things are revealed. Emotional truth about deep emotional truths. Deep truths. Let's even just stop using the word emotional. Deep truths about important relationships in your life. A relationship, multiple relationships will be revealed. And if you know where Gemini sits in your chart, it might point to the house where this is occurring to some extent. Outside of that, eclipses and full moon eclipses can also bring something positive. Most importantly, with a North Node eclipse, as you get through this period of observation and feeling a little bit like the breath has been knocked out of you, because that's just the full moon eclipsy aspect of it. It's either knocked out of you because something wonderful has happened in terms of contracts and culminations and limelight, or it's been knocked out of you because you are aware that some truths about relationships are bubbling to the surface through seemingly casual conversations and chatter and exchange of information. As you collect yourself and as you remain in a place of observation so you can identify what these are, remember with the North Node eclipse that it is ultimately about new vistas and skill acquisition. So it is always worth asking the question with regard to, when it comes to eclipses, what is ending and what is beginning, and what communication of fitting in related skills you're being encouraged to acquire, where you are being asked to make decisions. Sometimes new beginnings are about endings. So if it depends, if this is happening for you in the part of the chart that has to do with a career, it could be that whatever it is that's coming up propels you towards something new, but it also means ending something. So there is this question with the North Node eclipse with regard to really trying to understand and identify what in this part of your chart, either when it comes to the sign of Gemini and what that means to you in terms of what it involves and what it invokes and what it contains, but equally importantly, if not more importantly, what house is occupied by Gemini in your chart and what that stands for. There's the question of, what next for me here? What do I need to learn? What do I need to reform here? What do I need to change? Evolution. How do I evolve in this area? So what messages am I being given to say, this is where you need to evolve next? North Node eclipses, Gemini, got it, thank you. And the question with regard to the stillness and the meditation is to try and understand, well then, in order for me to develop and grow and meet my potential and continue to move on my sort of own hero's journey, what do I need? What steps and actions do I need to take to continue this evolution? What muscles do I build and skills do I need to acquire to continue on this path of evolution? And what do I need to end and what do I need to begin in order to complete this evolution? All right, now I feel really satisfied about this video, so I'm glad that I did it. I'm sorry about the shakiness because I'm literally holding on to the stand with like 2 fingers on this pile of books, but wow, it's been so much fun to do this. So thanks for sticking with me on this. Um, Goodness, goodness, goodness. Subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already. Click on the bell icon next to the subscribe button so that you're notified whenever I do new videos. Feel free to like or comment on these videos. Likes and comments increase their circulation on YouTube, especially if you found this useful. Share it, encourage people to watch it. Get the word out by all means. I would be deeply grateful if you did that. And my contact information is going to be in the description box once I'm done processing this video, so that you can always reach out to me and inquire about rates for readings. Or if you want me to make an easy to read version of your chart, I will happily give you information on that as well. Don't send me your personal information until you get my rates and you are clear that you want to avail of my services. Okay, we will leave it at this, and I will see you next time. Thanks. Bye.